Hello and welcome to Rotary in Action. I'm your host, Marty Peters, and our special show today has to do with a thing called Rotary Volunteers. Rotary International started a program years ago that gave men and women an opportunity to go to serve in developing nations around the world. And many of these men and women don't have a year or a month or 3 months to use. They can maybe take 2 or 3 or 4 weeks and go travel and help an orphanage or some organization that's in a developing part of the world. Rotary encourages this, and it has grown over the past 10 or 15 years to be something that really makes a difference, especially in developing nations. When we come back, we will introduce you to two very special guests who have been literally on the other side of this globe, making a difference, helping people and changing lives. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and this evening with us we have a very special lady who is a teacher in our community, a middle school teacher. Her name is Rosa Dubost. And Rosa, it's a pleasure to have you here. I know that you've spent a lot of time traveling around. We'll get to that in a moment. Also with us is Patrick Reilly, a teacher also in a middle school. And I think, Patrick, you've spent a couple of times traveling about, and what I'd like to do is to start this off with you, Rosa, and tell us, what do you think? What's your feeling about Rotary Volunteers, and what does it mean? What has it meant to you?
Rotary Volunteers can be many things for me. The first thing was, okay, I'm a volunteer. The first job was to teach. The second time was to help build the road. The second time was to go and help do vaccinations. So every time I have been back to Africa, it has been a totally different role. So a volunteer is somebody that is just willing to do whatever it's needed at the time.
And Patrick, how does Rotary come into this? Do they just give you an opportunity, and what was the selection process? How did this go about?
They give us an opportunity to go to different places that need our services, and we are not involved per se with Rotary. We are not members.
Right.
We were just volunteers, and they're willing to fund us to go over there to teach at these schools for an extended period of time. In our case, it was a minimum of 4 weeks. So that's how the volunteer service came about.
And how did you find out about this? I was going to ask you, Rosa, how did this whole magic thing happen to you?
Well, it actually happened in 1997 when I came back from Ecuador. I was a GSE member at that time. I was a very lucky person, a very lucky teacher to be selected to travel through Ecuador and meet a lot of wonderful people, a lot of wonderful teachers that are making a difference with very little resources. On our return, I met Steve Brown, and he says, we have a project going on, a 3H grant. How would you like to travel to Africa? And to me, when he said Africa, Africa has been my dream. That has been where I have always wanted to go. I said, after I visit Africa, I can die. It's to me, that was the ultimate. So when that happened, I jumped at it and I said, I'm there, count me in. And from then on, now it's history. I've been there now 3 times, and every time I go, it's a different, incredible, wonderful experience that I come back and I want more.
Yeah, you want more.
I want more.
I don't know if you're familiar, as the viewing audience, this Rotary Foundation is the donations of men and women around the world that men in Rotary and women in Rotary give funds to the Rotary Foundation that permits these things to happen. And you mentioned something about a 3H grant. And for our viewing audience, a 3H grant is a very large grant. It's a health, hunger, and humanity grant that maybe $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 will be given to one community to build a series of schools and wells to make that community in a third world country have an opportunity, have a chance to really grow. And so that 3H, I know health, hunger, and humanity was, I think, a catalyst for many of us in Rotary to say we can make really a big difference. Patrick, when you were going to go, did you find out, was Rosa the one that told you about it? Or
Rosa and I, our classrooms are located next to each other, and I was bit by the travel bug at an early age, and she came to me with this opportunity. And for us, teaching is not a job, it's fun, it's a fun activity, so I'm like, I'll go there in a second. So luckily through the same Rotarian that she mentioned, Steve Brown, I was able to qualify for this opportunity. But Rosa, thanks, introduced me to this opportunity.
Now, how many more teachers are in this classroom? I just want to know how many more are available. But
A lot.
It seems as though the word is out now that
Yes.
this is a great opportunity. And as a teacher, you can't take off a year. And as many men and women, we can't take a year off, but a Rotary volunteer can go for 4 or 6 weeks and really make a difference. I was going to ask you, Patrick, when you were there, the Eastern Africa, their language of instruction isn't Swahili, it's English. Is that all throughout the whole part of the countries?
Yeah, I was surprised. Well, everyone was surprised. What do they speak over there, you know? And no, they speak English. It was an English colony until 1964. So the kids have a base of English. And they actually spoke better English at the school in Kenya than my students that I teach in my school.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing?
It was amazing.
Listen, I want to share with our viewing audience a tape that I don't know if you've seen this or not. We took a tape of you when you gave a presentation, and I'd like the audience to take a look at this because this is really the magic of when somebody comes back from a trip such as you had done. Patrick, let's watch this right now.
We got there and the school was not functioning properly. They were building a new compound and they were in the process of building it. So there were 2 classrooms for about 80 children. And with other children that could not fit in the classroom were left without schooling. So Rosa and I decided we needed to get some curriculum, set some standards so we can follow, and once we leave, the school can continue to grow in the right direction. Well, we worked very hard for 5 weeks and we set the standards and curriculum, but with only 2 classrooms and a lack of resources, it was tough to keep it going. And it was a great experience, and more than the teaching, it was the bonding with the children, because these children have absolutely no one in their lives. So my goal every day was to make at least 50, 60 kids laugh and feel good, because that's something they don't feel often. When we left, they had a going away party for us, very loving people over there, and since Rosa, she said, I can't talk, I'm too broken up, you have to. So I was the man, and I had to go up and say thank you in front of everyone. I lasted about 5 seconds before I broke down in tears. And actually, the second time I returned, I spent less time in the classroom and more time out in the field seeing where these kids are actually taken from. And corresponding with my wife through emails, I told her, I can't take this anymore. My heart is broken. Because after 5 weeks of going out onto the streets and seeing these poor children begging for a chance to get into this school, I went home every day back to my little cot with a very heavy heart. But then each morning I'd wake up sad and lonely, but as soon as I'd walk out and see those smiling children, I was sky high again. And Rotary provides a tremendous opportunity for someone like myself who has a lot of time off and is willing to go to these third world countries and give back. And in the springtime, I plan on going to northern Thailand and teaching in another similar school. But just looking at everyone here, it's just, you guys have done such a tremendous thing. And one little thing from an American here, which may seem like nothing, $5, $10, is a gigantic contribution over there. And what the Rotary has done over there is created a school that is amazing, that blows the other schools away that are funded by the government. This school is a first-class compound that is providing quality education to the children, but more importantly, providing spiritual, basically rehabilitation for these poor children. And it's giving them something to look forward to.
It was so real to see that video because that was held at the Salk Institute, and that was a very special time when all of us come together and share our experiences. But Rosa, the Salk Institute where they held that ties to some of the Rotary volunteer work that you were doing there the last trip. Weren't you helping give out the polio immunization shots?
Yes, I was. Yes,
and
I
that
was.
was right up in northern Kenya.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's amazing.
In Marsabit, up in the desert area.
In the desert. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you, Patrick, you've had this opportunity and you've traveled there, but tell us about the lack of resources, I guess is the best way to describe it, for these students in these schools, especially like in Nairobi, where you were in Kenya.
Well, it's exactly like one would imagine Africa would be. The schools are not built too well. You have one desk for 3 kids. Pencils are far and few between. Books are almost non-existent. Writing material is almost non-existent. And one of the things that we were able to successfully do was to bring goods with us over there, such as school supplies and many donated books from our school site, plus other people who donated materials to us to bring to the program in Kenya. So the school we were at relies heavily upon donated goods, and through this the Rotary program, these goods are able to get there and actually be used.
I know from my own personal experience is that you have these things called matching grants. And I know that when we were in countries, you would try to identify a school that needed a well or something, and then the Rotary Club would ask for some money, and the Rotary Club in the United States would get some money, and they'd double that money and then redouble it again, and that way you could have a well or these books. And I recall, we did some encyclopedias about 5 years ago?
About 5 years ago.
Throughout the whole eastern side of the country of Africa. So.
And there is another man that I think that we need to call here, and his name it's the Bookman. He's located in San Diego, and through Rotary, because you have supported him, Rotary has supported him, he continues to support any school, any teacher, anyone that is willing to just go pick up books and send anywhere at no cost at all.
Well, you know, the relationships we get with Rotarians, to me, are so exciting because everybody has something to add to the equation. You know, right now, I want to show this next tape on Rotary volunteers that don't leave America, that are staying here, but what they do is magic. Let's take a look at that right now.
I'd never fix a computer.
I'd never been outside of Seattle.
Never even thought about being a volunteer.
Until the Rotary Club gave me an opportunity.
At our high school here in Seattle, Rotary Club supports a program called Computers for the World.
We would build older computers and then personally take them to places where people can't afford them.
We've taken computers to Mozambique,
Lima, Mexico,
and in my hometown in Russia.
It's a big effort and everybody contributes. The students, the teachers, and the Rotary volunteers.
We get real-world experience that we need to be successful.
I've learned so much just by volunteering.
Computers for the World is one of many Rotary programs that relies upon volunteers of all ages from the community.
It's my way of making a positive impact on the lives of others.
It's a great example of the power of volunteerism.
You should volunteer. The world is counting on you.
It's interesting to see these men and women in the Seattle area that are able to take their talents and their gifts and turn those into hope for some students, whether they're in Africa or in South America or in Central America. All of these people are available. You know, Rosa, you were going to share, I think, that a presentation that you made right in your own backyard. Tell us about that.
Well, just recently I was invited by, it's actually a private school, a Catholic private school. They were working on different cultures, and they called me and they said, how would you like to come and do a presentation? And I said, wonderful. So I went in. This is a 7th grade class. Wonderful group of young men and ladies. They enjoyed the presentation very much. I shared with them some of the things that I brought from Africa, some of the jewelry, some of the, things that were given to us, and pictures, slides. They were so touched by it that they have decided now as a class that they are going to bring all of their resources, which means they feel that they don't have much money to give, but they are giving their books, they're giving toys, they're giving clothing, all of the things that they feel that they can donate, because when they saw the slides, when they saw the children, they said, it is sad to see that there are children that could not have these things that here we take for granted, that here we have too much of. And so it is really wonderful to see what happens when you share some of our experiences with other children and how they are touched by it as much as we are.
The thing that astounded me in seeing some of these pictures especially was the discipline, I guess is the best way, the respect for teachers that goes on in country. And I know that that's exciting for you to come back and see your own class, and I think that changes their mindsets as well. What I'd like to do, you talked about this volunteering when you were able to give drops for the immunization of polio, and I would like to share with you a little tape that really brings us to bear of what Rotary International and Rotarians around the world are doing to get rid of this terrible disease called polio. Let's watch.
Many places around the world are still fighting a war that most Americans don't know about, the war against polio. The paralyzing disease that held America hostage earlier this century continues to cripple thousands of children each year. Since 1985, Rotary International's 1.2 million members have joined the battle against polio. Rotary volunteers have fought this disease in their communities, educating parents about polio and helping health officials in vaccinating children everywhere. Along with Rotary's partners, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, over 1 billion children have been immunized against polio. The end of the war against polio is near. Once victory is achieved, this historic health drive will guide in the fight against other vaccine-preventable diseases, giving the children of the world a healthier future. To find out more about Rotary's Polio Plus program, visit www.rotary.org. Rotary, winning the war against polio.
We're just delighted to have that tape, but I wanted to talk to you, Patrick, about what lessons have you brought back that you can share with us this afternoon, and more importantly, your students when you're back in classes?
Well, it's great to bring my artifacts that I actually got in Kenya and my pictures and bring them into a class environment where these kids are learning about Africa from a text, an impersonal text. And here I am with these smiling faces of all my friends in Africa and relating stories about this child. And they're able to see firsthand of what is actually going on over there. And they're able to recognize themselves of, hey, I got a pretty good living in the United States. When I bring back my horror stories from Kenya, but present it with a smiling face. So they're able to see that these children persevere over crazy stuff to keep on going and live.
I would imagine that that sort of has a leveling effect in the class to make people more respectful of what they've taken so much for granted for, too, in our country. That's just normal.
It's a very humbling experience for the students as well as myself. And each time I do these presentations, I've done various throughout our school in many different classes. And each time I do the presentation, I get a little choked up myself, and I see kids that you wouldn't expect to be in awe, actually floored by what I'm saying. And they're learning. And I teach them a few phrases, and when I still see those children on campus, they say Jumbo to me, which is hello, and things like that they actually learn from my 40-minute presentation.
You know, when we think about the opportunities that Rotary has availed, you know, there's 200,000 men and women around the world, and all these connections that they have in these various Rotary clubs. Now there are more than 29,800 Rotary clubs, and all of these clubs are interconnected and helping people achieve these amazing dreams. You know, I would like to share this thing on the problem that I've seen, and I talked to you about this before, Rosa, was the differences in schools that go on. We have a film clip that I'd like to sort of have us take a look at and just talk about it as it's going on with the facilities, or the lack of facilities that they have over there. You know, it's Rosa talking about this, the kids that you've seen in these schools. Tell us a little about what goes on in these classrooms and what's missing, what's lacking, I guess is a better word.
Well, what is lacking is resources, basically. When you have huge class sizes, you know, here we have caps. We're used to our cap sizes, you know, the typical, classroom in America. Over there is no such thing as a cap. We have 40, 50, 60 students at a class, and some of them might not even have a chair to sit. You know, they will be on the floor. Not only that, but blackboard. What is a blackboard? A blackboard is a piece of cement on the wall painted black, and that's what you use. So the chalk that you use, it's no good. Erasers, what's an eraser? There is no such thing. You know, we get little rags over there or something like that. Books, there is no such thing as books. And one of the nice things about, when Patrick and I traveled together to our first year, we realized what was needed, and we came back and immediately we started working on that, tried to get our resources together so that whoever took our spot later on was able to have something to work with. Yeah, to work with.
I'm looking at these shots and I'm just amazed at the density, the compressed nature. Patrick, is this normal for these kinds of classrooms?
Yeah, it's totally normal. And seen before, they show 4 children sharing a book. That's just standard in Africa. So the classrooms are packed, but the one thing, the children are very well behaved and fighting to learn. This is a good example of what a school would look like. There's no roofs. The chalkboard is a little easel, if that. Doors, no doors, mud. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing is that they're striving to learn in this environment. They know the importance of knowledge.
It's astounding. I was amazed at looking at some of these photos that were brought back, that you brought back when you were there the last time. And it's astounding to see how far they go with such little. And how much further that we can take them if we can bring more, in Rotary Volunteers, more passion to be in the countries. This, I don't know, they talked about water over there too. Is that a problem as far as the...
Well, you know, that's something as simple as a glass of water we take for granted. If we go to a drinking fountain, we grab a glass of water at our home in the sink, we turn the, you know, there is no such thing. There is no luxury as, you know, to turn the water on. So that is something that we just, like I said, we just take for granted.
I love this with these students that never seen anybody blow bubbles. And now this was a red balloon that some of the
small detail that makes them so happy. That is
exciting.
You know, that is one of the things that Patrick and I noticed.
I wanted to ask you a question that I don't know how to phrase this, Patrick, but how could we make Rotary Volunteers better? How can we share with more people this opportunity for them to get involved?
I just think advertising the opportunities, because everyone has inside of them something that wants to give something back. So it's for teachers, advertised within the schools. If you need an engineer to go build a bridge or a well in a third world country, advertise in the engineering department. Just go to the places where you need those types of workers. And people will volunteer. This is a lifelong opportunity to give something back to less fortunate. So I really think advertising is the key in getting the word out there. That, hey, this exists, you can do this too.
Yeah. And it's so unique because we don't have to speak another language to go to the whole part of Eastern Africa and make those kinds of changes. When you've been there, I know that you've come back with more passion every time. And I'm always curious, do you ever get to the point where you feel like, gee, I just want to stay home for a while now, or does it ever stop?
No, it doesn't. When you have been touched by the hearts of the children, it doesn't. You want more, and you need to go back and give them more, because we are the only, I would say myself, I'm the mother. I feel like a mother to them, something that they haven't had. These children come from the streets. They haven't had a family. They haven't had that bonding. And for them and for myself, this is where it's at. And so no, there's not enough. I mean, I can't wait for my next trip back.
You know, and those kids from the street too, I was thinking that that's a special group of children that you were with, Patrick, where these kids are picked up literally off the street. They've been orphaned, and that's the only hope that they've ever had, is by this order of priests, I think, that bring them in, and it's like a little boys' town. Is that how it started?
Yeah, it's called the Bosco Boys. It's a boys' town, and what you're going to see when you go to a city such as Nairobi in Africa is packs of young boys living on the streets and roaming the streets, and what these priests give to them is actually a family structure. People love family, people love structure, so they bring these kids off the street into an environment where there's love, a bed, some food, and some friends where they could be safe and feel love for the first time in their lives.
It's so refreshing to hear that, because I have a poem that was taped by a young lady when we were there, and I'd like to share that with you right now. Let's take a look at this very special poem.
What is your name?
Anne Buguza.
Can you tell us your poem?
Our home. Poem. Huh? Poem. You say there is happiness. Where is happiness? At home. Father, mother, and the children cry. Hungry, 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 everywhere. You say there is happiness. Where is happiness? Look at Nairobi and Tanzania. Bomb blasts, bomb blasts, bomb blasts. You say there is happiness. Where is happiness? People die. Children left orphan. HIV victims. You say there is happiness. Where is happiness? Look at Burundi, Ethiopia, and Sierra Leone. People cry, people cry. We pray to God to bring happiness in Africa. Thank you.
For all the children that we've seen, especially this last young lady, I want to thank you, Rosa, so much, and to you, Patrick, for taking the time not only to be with us here in our studio, but more importantly, to make the trips to make a difference. And I know that the passion goes on. I know, Patrick, you're going to be going off on another Rotary Volunteer program very soon to Thailand, and I just can't thank you enough for your courage to go and make a difference. It's with that I want to thank you all for watching this evening, but most importantly is that if you are touched by a poem from a young lady or from Rosa or from Patrick, I would hope that you would take the time to pick up the phone, get involved with your own local Rotary Club in your own community. We do this because we believe that you can come with us and make a difference and give people some special hope by becoming a Rotary volunteer. It's with that I thank you for watching Rotary in Action, and have a great day.